Back in the 70s, my grandfather dropped my grandmother, mom, and her two sisters off to do some shopping on his way to work. Since he wasn't able to pick them up, they hitchhiked home. My mom at the time was around 10 or 11. Middle sister would have been about 7 or 8, and the youngest was about a year old. They get picked up by a guy in a pickup truck, who has them all sit in the back row with one of them holding the baby. My grandmother was giving directions to their home from the highway, but the guy ignored her and went by their exit, claiming that he had to make a stop first. Didn't really say much else to them during the drive. My mom remembers my grandmother being very quiet and very nervous. Eventually they come up to a farm. The driver tells them to wait in the car and goes inside the house. While he's gone, they just sit there terrified. They're in the middle of nowhere and know they couldn't make it out on foot. A few minutes later, the driver comes out with a second guy who looks into the truck and sees my mom's youngest sister. He starts flipping out, screaming at the driver that he shouldn't have brought the baby back. They aren't going to do anything with her, and some other things I can't remember. Ends up telling him to get away from the farm. Driver gets back into the truck, apologizes, and they get back on the highway and drive again in silence. My grandmother, normally a very smart woman, had him drive directly to their house, although I suspect her reasoning was she'd already given him the address before anything seemed off. They lived in that house for several years, and luckily, never saw either of them a second time. This is an incident that happened to me about 10 years ago. I live in Melbourne, Australia. I was driving home from work one night around 9 p.m. midweek, so the roads were quiet. As I was driving downhill, I heard a sound that was like a jet engine roaring behind me. Next thing I know, a car goes flying past me going twice the speed limit. It looked like a fairly old crappy car. The car started to get the speed wobbles, and then one of the tires came flying off and rolled at speeds downhill while the car spun out and crashed. I stopped my car to make sure whoever inside was okay. A guy got out of the car and looked over at me, then started moving extremely quickly towards me. I don't know why, but I hit my internal locks in the car, which was fortunate because no more than 2 seconds later, the guy started grabbing at the driver's side door and smashing on my windscreen with his fist trying to get in. I'll never forget that crazy look he had in his eyes. I put my foot down on the accelerator and drove off back home. I decided to swap cars once I got home and drove back to see what was going on. I saw 2 fire trucks and about 4 police close to where the incident happened. When I got back to the crash site, the guy was no longer there, so I decided to head home. The next day at work, I was online bored reading the news when I saw an article that shocked me. The article was about a guy who had been in a police chase for 1 hour, and the police stopped chasing him because it was becoming too dangerous. Turns out the guy was high on meth, had stolen a car an hour's drive away, and had been in a hot pursuit since. After crashing the car, the guy apparently crossed to the other side of the road and hailed the first car that appeared, which was a taxi. He got into the taxi and stole it. In the process, he pushed the driver out of the driver's side door, and the driver got stuck and dragged at speeds. The driver died from the incident. I called the police and had a detective assigned to me. He finger-checked my car and got a statement. I had to testify in the Supreme Court as a key witness in a murder trial. The guy got 30 years, and they told me that my testimony was one of the main factors in convicting him. I often think back to that night and wonder if I hadn't locked my doors, would I have been one of the ones who got murdered? Many moons ago, I was an editor. I was cutting a commercial late at night, and because of the deadline required, I had to stay overnight to finish. I'm on the second floor of a 30-story building. Half of the floor are editing suites, and the rest are rented out to various businesses like designers, developers, or mostly tech companies, except for one office, which was the largest on the floor, about 600 square feet, which belonged to a psychiatrist. It's about 3 a.m. and I'm super focused on my work. Suddenly realized that I was starving and the deli across the street from me opened 24/7. I decided to get some food. All the offices have sliding frosted glass doors. I open mine and realize the floor is completely empty and dark. With the exception for the emergency exit lights, the hallway was completely dead and dark. I get my food and come back into the office, close the door, and watch some YouTube while I eat. Suddenly, I hear the elevator bang down the hallway. I knew that the entire building except for the 19th floor was empty. The 19th floor was some French company. There wasn't even anyone at the front desk. You had to swipe in with a key card at 2 doors in the lobby. I slowly slide the door quietly and stick my head out of the office. There was nothing. I see the light from the inside the elevator casting a light onto the floor, but I couldn't see because of the way the hallway was set up. Eventually I lock the office door, put my giant headphones on, and get back to work. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because at around 5:30 a.m., a loud knocking on the glass wakes me up. I jump up, open the door, and see one of the building managers and a cop. I walk out into the hallway and hear a commotion and see more cops. They ask me what I'm doing here, so I will explain. They asked if I saw or heard anything, and I said no because of my headphones and me falling asleep, and etc. Cops walks towards the other cops. I ask the manager what's going on, and she tells me that someone broke into the building somehow, bypassing the 2 doors downstairs that required a key card, broke into the psychiatrist's office, and stole files on 3 patients according to what the doctor told her and the cops. I was there that whole time, either working or asleep, but didn't hear anything. When she told me this, I almost crapped myself. I mean, to go after 3 specific files takes some serious dedication to your mission. All I could think about was, since it wasn't some petty robbery and there are tech offices all over the floor, I kept thinking about what might have happened to me had I run into them. I ended up leaving that place several months later and never looked back. I just want to say thank you to everyone who have watched this video. If you can, it would be greatly appreciated if you can smash the like button on this video and share it to others. But most importantly, please subscribe to this channel for more content like this in the near future. Also, please feel free to tell me in the comment section below on which video I should do next. This is Mr. Shin Ramen. Till next time, stay safe and stay scared.